Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Islam Current Debates, Nebraska University Talk Series. I'm Abla Hasan. I teach Arabic language and culture here at UNL. And it's my pleasure and honor today to have our dear guest, Dr. AbdelMadjid Ben Habib, Associate Professor in Psychology Department, Tlemcen University, Algeria. We always, Dr. AbdelMadjid, encourage our students in modern languages to learn new languages, and mashallah, you speak, teach, and conduct research in Arabic, French, and English. Today, Dr. AbdelMadjid will be sharing with us insights on the Quranic story of Noah. The Holy Quran tells us the story of Prophet Noah and his people in a number of surahs or Quranic chapters. Like all Quranic stories, the story holds a message from God, not only to Noah's people, but according to the Islamic belief at least, but to the whole community or to the whole humanity living in different cultures, different times. Today, Dr. AbdelMadjid will be sharing insights on the story of Noah from his psychological and linguistic approach of Noah's story in the Quranic text. To you, without further ado, Dr. AbdelMadjid.
Thank you, Dr. Abla Hasan, for inviting me to this big topic, Global Islam current debate. I would like also to thank the University of Nebraska to organizing this events. I would like also to thank all the audience to attend this humble presentation about share the PowerPoint. Yes. Is it clear? Yes. Are you seeing?
Yes, we see the PowerPoint.
Good. The title of my work is Noah and His People and Their Leaders in the Quran. First of all, I would like to mention that what pushed me to work on this topic, and by the way, this is quite the literal translation of the presentation that I gave when I defended my PhD last 2 years ago. It was in Arabic, and this is quite the similar translation into English. First of all, my education, because I performed my BA and MA dealing with discourse analysis, and when I moved to perform my PhD, I moved from using discourse analysis methodology from applying it to human discourse to apply it to the divine discourse. Another point that attracted my attention by working on the Quranic text is that the controversy between the Quran as a divine text, at least from the Islamic standpoint, and human and social sciences as a methodology and epistemological framework, which represent human production. On the other hand, what also attracted my attention is a number of academic work which are mentioning terrorist group and extremists who are justifying their violence based on their own interpretation of the Quranic text, referring to jihad, etc. And a last point is the growing controversy over the Quranic text, taking into account the various academic institutions and academic journals which are appearing in various countries, referring, for example, to the biannual conference in London organized by the School of Oriental and African Studies, and also various conferences which are organized by International Quranic Studies Association and other academic institutions, mentioning also various journals like Journal of Quranic Studies. I will mention briefly some approaches about the Quranic text. There is the synchronic exegesis about the Quran, which is a fractional interpretation of the Quran, and it is using the sciences of the Arabic language like grammar, semantics, etc., to deal with the Quranic text. And here, from the classical period to now, we find that based on the interpretation of the Sudani scholar Abul Qasim Hash Hamid, who mentioned that there is a lot of repetition that we can find in these various fractional exegesis. There is also the diachronic exegesis of the Quran, which is mainly historical, and we can distinguish between the Islamic approach and the Orientalist approach. Both of them, they are sharing external Quranic issues, like referring to the story of Noah, focusing on the ark, the length of the ark, the number of people that Noah brought into the ark, etc. And the difference is that the Islamic approach is mentioning that Quranic stories are mainly for the messenger Muhammad to strengthen his heart. But on the other hand, the Orientalist approach is focusing on the connection between the Quranic text and the Old Testament and other sacred texts and various Oriental languages. The third approach is the thematic exegesis, which is more global, and it takes this or that topic, like the prayer or fasting or the belief, and this kind of exegesis tries to link between various verses which are connected to the same topic. And in this kind of exegesis, scholars, of course, it depends on their belief, if they are Muslim or no Muslim, and they are using sciences of Arabic language and or using also Western methodological tools. And here we can refer to Toshihiko Izutsu or in the Western world, or I can also refer to the current scholar Abdurrahman Hilali, who is from Syria. And from this, all these kind of approaches, I try to problematize and to review and to question again what is about Noah in the Quranic text, and by applying some concepts and methodologies from human and social sciences, and to try to overcome a classical interpretation of the Quran, and to see how the Quran is replying to this kind of application. And I try to focus on the linguistic root, qaf wa lam, qawl, which refers from Ibn Jinni perspective to dynamic movements. And what also attracted my attention is that the verb qala is the most repeated in the Quran, the most repeated verb in the Quran. From this perspective, I try to problematize the activity of qawl, and I choose when I saw the qawl of Noah and the qawl of the leaders of Noah's people and the rest of of Noah's people, I see that Nuh said, Nuh قال لقومه. Then I noticed that قال الملأ قال الملأ الذين كفروا لنوح. And from this perspective, I try to name this activity التقاول, that the morphological form refers to تفاعل, which means inter-influence. And because I am studying the verbal exchange, I named it, humbly speaking, al-taqawul, which means there is a verbal inter-influence between these two main interlocutors, referring to Noah on one hand, and referring to the leaders of Noah's people and the rest of Noah's people on the other hand. The problematic of my work is about studying التقاول on the topic of divinity. First of all, it is about addressing the logic of the issue of divinity in al-taqawul of Noah and the leaders of Noah's people and the rest of the people. Most of the time, the leaders are replying to Noah, but sometimes the rest of people are also replying to Noah. It consists to understand how this topic of divinity is both interlocutors are dealing in their discourse, which is named al-taqawul. And more precisely, I try to see how each mutaqawil subject or each interlocutor is constructing the discursive object of Allah, aiming to detect thematic continuity and or thematic discontinuity within al-taqawul of Noah and the leaders and the rest of Noah's people. Thematic continuity means when we are constructing the discourse, part of the discourse, we try to connect in a homogeneous way various parts of the same discourse, and consequently the discourse makes sense. But when there is a thematic discontinuity, the interlocutor is breaking or is cutting these parts of his discourse, or yes, and his or her own discourse is reflecting not homogeneous meaning. On the other hand, I will try to also to understand the social representations which cross the way of elaborating the issue of divinity in al-taqawul of Noah and the leaders from the structural perspective. It means from the content of this social representation, and also from the dynamic side of these social representation, referring to the process of this representation. Now, briefly speaking, I will try to define what does mean as social representations, because it reflects a theory in social psychology that was created by the French theorist Serge Moscovici. Social representations are an organized and a dynamic set of knowledge and ideas about a particular object. It could be a physical object, and it could be also metaphorical or symbolic object. And these set of organized and dynamic knowledge about this or that object are characterized by stability and changements. What is stable reflects the shared consensus between members of the same group. At the same time, the individuals are creating some changements over this stability, and from this perspective, you can refer to what is organized and what is at the same time dynamic into or inside these social representations shared by the same group. The structure, perspective, or component of the social representations refer to 3 points. The first point is the content, and the content, this is the structural perspective or component of the social representations. It refers to the information. Information refers to meanings and answers about the object. The attitude, the assessment, or the evaluation about the object. The assessment could be positive or negative. And the field is how to organize all the information that we have about the content, based also on the attitude that we have about the same object. And we can organize these information as they are much more positive, for example, or less positive, etc., and much more negative and less negative, etc. The process is referring to the object. The process refers to the process refer to not before we were referring to the structure, and now we are referring to the process, which refer to the objectification. It means how can we simplify the content of social representation, and the encourage when an object of social representation is strange, the group try to make a changement from its from the strange characteristic of social representation, and it transform, the group transform what is strange to what is familiar. And when the object becomes familiar, it is known and it is accepted, and the group can deal with this object. This is briefly speaking the content and the process of social representation. I will come back to you if you have any question about this approach. Now, the hypothesis, I try to give or to focus on 3 hypotheses. The first one is that Al-Taqawul of Nuh is reflecting some clues, like object of worship Allah, because he is repeating in Al-Taqawul of Nuh. We notice that this character is repeating قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله, is repeating this statement, and this is one discursive object in Al-Taqawul of Nuh. Nuh also is a messenger. This is also another part of the discourse, because he is identifying himself as he is a messenger. And also Al-Taqawul of Nuh is also referring to the believers, those who believe. And here we notice that there is a thematic continuity. Compared to Al-Taqawul of Nuh, the Al-Taqawul of the leaders, the clues that refer to the content of this Taqawul is Nuh is in a manifest error. إِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Nuh could be stoned. لئن لم تنتهي يا نوح لتكونن من المرجومين. Nuh is just a human. ما نراك إلا بشرا مثلنا. Nuh is just followed by the lowest. الأراذل القوم. Al-Taqawul of the leaders is referring also to their forefathers. آباؤنا الأولون. They are also referring to gods. لا تذرن آلهتكم. They are also referring to angels. What we notice here that there is a thematic discontinuities. Why there is a thematic discontinuities in Al-Taqawul of the leaders? Because when Nuh is performing his activity of Al-Taqawul, he is always repeating Abdullah, but Taqullah, etc. Most of the time, Abdullah is the most repeated statement in Al-Taqawul of Noah, but sometimes the leaders are replying by saying Noah is in manifest error, and sometimes they said you will be stoned. Sometimes they said you are just a human, and sometimes they said you are followed by the lowest. And here, even that Al-Taqawul of Noah is showing a thematic continuity, but Al-Taqawul of the leaders is also expressing thematic discontinuities compared to Al-Taqawul of Noah, mentioning that in all times, Noah is starting his activity of Al-Taqawul. And in all times, the leaders are performing their activity of Al-Taqawul as they are replying. But Noah is always starting his activity of Al-Taqawul. The reason why Al-Taqawul of the leaders is reflecting this thematic discontinuities, but Al-Taqawul of Noah is reflecting thematic continuity. In terms of social representations, we notice that Noah and his group is questioning polytheism based on their own social representations, which are revolving around monotheism. And here, if we come back to the verse number 35 from the chapter 11, Surah Hud, we notice that the Quran is using a specific time and also a specific statement. They said here the Quran is the verse 35 refer to the following verse content, sorry. أم يقولون افتراه. There is here a sharp difference between when the Quran is referring to al-taqawul of the leaders, when the Quran is using qalu in the past time, but here the Quran is using al-mudari'. أم يقولون افتراه. أم يقولون افتراه is not in the past, which means that they were always saying to about they were always saying about the origin of the speech of Noah, that he they say he invented it. And when we see the contextual usage of the Quran, when we notice the Quranic usage of iftara, we can conclude that it is referring to a book, to a written origin of a speech, or and most of the time, or we can say that the contextual Quranic usage of this word and this time refer that the most dangerous thing for the group of Noah is that the source from which Noah is speaking, and here we refer to a written origin, compared to the oral origin of polytheism in which characterize the social representation of the leaders of Noah's people and the rest of Noah's people. And from this written origin, the polytheism was questioned by into the activity of al-taqawul of Noah, And this object is linked to the characteristic of worship and the intention of Noah by using his activity of al-taqawul is to push his people to move from polytheism as a main object of divinity into Noah's people, and to transform this object to be Allah as the only object which is linked to the characteristic of worship. Compared to these social representations, the social representations of Noah's people and their leaders reflect that they are resisting to the content of al-taqawul of Noah. And here we refer to the center of interest, which is polytheism. And here polytheism is the main topic which is attracting the attention of Noah's people and their leaders. And this polytheism could be split into three objects. The first object is the forefathers, and the characteristic which is linked to the characteristic here is the information in terms of structure. The characteristic which is linked to the object, the forefathers, is to hear, because in the verse number, in the chapter number 23, Surah Al-Mu'minun, in the chapter number 23, in the verse number 24, the leaders said, ولو ما سمعنا بهذا في آبائنا الأولين, which could be translated. I came back to Sahih International Translation and also to Abdul Halim translation. We have not heard of this among our forefathers. And here the translation could be modified a little bit, because we can say, based on this analysis, humbly speaking, we can translate, we have not heard of this, instead of saying among our forefathers, we can translate in a literal word, in our forefathers, because even the Quran is using في آبائنا الأولين and not من بين آبائنا الأولين. في آبائنا الأولين, because it's because these forefathers are not present during the time of Noah's people. They are historical forefathers, and they are hearing in them in terms of transmission from generation to generation. The reason why here the social representation of Noah and his people is based on a written origin, but here the main origin of the information of Noah's people is heard origin and not a written origin. And this is the main difference which by which we can distinguish and oppose between the content of and the origin of the social representations of Noah and his group, and the content at the origin of the social representation of Noah's people and their leaders. And the reason why we can put this this object referring to the forefathers as the main sub-object which characterize the social representation of Noah's people and their leaders, and which is linked to the characteristic to hear, because the leaders are hearing in their forefathers, and based on that they are referring to the leaders, they are guiding the rest of the people. Then we have the second object, which are the main gods, and the characteristic which is linked to these main gods is to worship them. قالوا لا تذرن آلهتكم. This is in the chapter number 71, Surah Nuh, and can give you the translation. The verse number 23. And said, never leave your gods and never leave Wad or Suwa' or Yaghut and Ya'uq and Nasr. And here we notice that Noah's people are using tawkidat. They are confirming their statements, which means that these gods are the main gods for which represent the main object, the second main object of the social representations of Noah's people and their leaders. And we have the secondary object, again, not a second object, but a secondary object, which is Allah, for Noah's people and their leaders. It is just characterized by sending down angels. And here, even that, we can see that there is the main object here, Allah, which characterized the social representation of Noah's people. And here we see that Allah also exists as an object in this, which characterizes the social representation of Noah and his group. But the place of Allah is the only object which characterizes the social representation of Noah and his group, and he is the only interest of worship. But the same object is in the third place, and it is just a secondary object, and it is just characterized by sending down angels, and not the object, it is not characterized like in the social representation of Noah and his group by the only interest of worship. The main interest of worship for the main interest of the social representation of Noah's people and their leaders is to hear into their forefathers, then to worship their main gods. And Allah is just in the third place with a marginal activity which consists to send down angels. Here, to understand the activity of al-taqawul, I try to apply two techniques. The first technique is a discourse analysis grid that I brought from my previous supervisor in my BA and MA, Professor Hussein Nouani, who is a university teacher and scholar in University of Algiers too, in the capital city of Algeria, where I performed my BA and MA. Then I also use the three-dimensional technique that which is from the well-known scholar who created the theory of social representations, Serge Moscovici, who is French. About discourse analysis could be split between two main components: the macro structures, studying the coherence, and the micro structures, studying the cohesion. The macro structure, first of all, its contents refer to some subcomponent like the sequence, in which we study the content of the discourse and the interlocutors. In Al-Taqawul of Nuh, the content is here. I'm mentioning just a few content because I cannot mention all because this is the summary of my PhD. I am just referring to some content. The content is to worship Allah alone. This is the main content, and to fear Allah. Ittaqullah. The interlocutors are Nuwa's people, referring to their leaders and the rest of the people, and Nuwa's Lord, because the Taqawul is also is between Nuwa's and his Lord, and the believers. On the other hand, Al-Taqawul of the leaders, the content refer to what Nuwa's people worship and to gods of Nuwa's people. It refers also to Allah, to angels. The interlocutors are Nuh, and who followed Nuh because they are speaking to them, and also Al-Taqawul of the leaders is also performed toward the rest of Nuwa's people. The field, another component, is the topic of dialogue and the subtopics. In Al-Taqawul of Nuh, we see that the main topic is Allah, to be worshipped and feared. Allah, when we split it as sub-themes or topics, it becomes Allah is able to forgive people, and Allah have mercy upon you, upon Noah's people, if they will move from polytheism to monotheism. Allah also is characterized to perform painful punishments if they resist to the call of Noah's call. Another topic is Noah as a human, and yes, as a human. As a human and a messenger, because he is referring to himself as a human, and he is referring to himself as a messenger. The subtopics of Nuh is Nuh convey to them message to his people, and Nuh advise his people, Nuh warn his people, etc. And also another main topic is referring to who moved to worship Allah, referring to the believers. And the subtopic of the believers is that they will meet their lords. Allah is the most knowing of what is within their souls, etc. Compared to that, Al-Taqawul of the leaders, the main topic is no, sorry. The main topic is Noah himself as a human. The subtopics of this topic, which is Noah, is that he is in manifest error, he is a liar, he is followed just by the lowest, he is inventor of his speech, he is a debater, mujadil, jadaltana, and all these subtopics refer to a negative attitude. And also another topic, who moved from worship gods, the lowest, they are also immature. Another main topic, the forefathers and the fathers, because sometimes they are using the forefathers, aba'una al-awwalun, and sometimes they are using aba'una, the fathers. They hear in them, they follow what they worshipped. Another topic is gods, alihatuna, never leave them. And the subtopics of gods, Wad, Suwa', Yahud, etc. And then Allah. In the macrostructures, we use also the genre. We study also the genre, referring to the linguistic usage. And here we refer to multiple usage of discourse, like describing, explaining, etc. And here, briefly speaking, we are referring to speech act. In the التقاول of Nuh is, first of all, he is using the directive speech act, which consists to express request or order toward his interlocutor to do something. And here Nuh is saying repeatedly, "Oh my people, worship Allah alone and also fear Allah." Here we can say that Nuh is using a request instead of using an order as two main components of the directive speech act, because he is starting his speech, his activity of al-taqawul, by saying ya qawmi, which means that he is expressing kindness toward his interlocutor. And from this perspective, we can say that the directive speech act of Nuh is a request instead of an order. Here, after the opposition, when al-taqawul of the leaders is expressing opposition toward al-taqawul of Nuh is moving from using the directive as a speech act to use the assertive as a speech, another speech act. And the assertive is referring to how is the word. And here he is identifying himself, and he's expressing the components of his identity, as he is a messenger, as he is conveying message, as he is advising his people, etc. And all this statement refer that Nuh is using the assertive as another speech act when al-taqawul of the leaders resisted to al-taqawul of Nuh, when this one used the directive speech act, referring to the request. And then when they continue to resist, al-taqawul of Nuh moved again from the assertive speech act to use the performative speech act. And he tried to call out his people, because they are still resisting, and to call out somebody means to attract in much more way his attention about the topic that I am conveying to him or to her. And from this perspective, we notice that Nuh is using the interrogation of confirmation, الاستفهام التقريري, when the interlocutor is denying the news which are conveyed by the locutor. And also he is using the denial interrogative, الاستفهام الإنكاري, because when the interlocutor is firmly denying the refusal of the news, and here we can there are some example. Can there be doubts about Allah? That what can be noticed in the chapter number 14, Surah Ibrahim, when the people of Noah and other people, because in this chapter they are the Quran is mentioning a set of peoples. Here the messengers, Noah and other messengers, they are saying afillahi shak. Afillahi shak means, and here there is a denial interrogative, which means that there is no doubt about Allah, after expressing various statements before using the denial interrogative. Compared to التقاول of Nuh, التقاول of the leaders refer to the usage of the assertive speech act and the performative speech act. And here we are referring mainly to the expressive as a kind of speech act which refer to emotions and attitude. And here there are some verses which confirm what we are referring to. Indeed, we see you in a manifest error. We do not see you followed except by the lowest. And when al-taqawul of Nuh continues, al-taqawul of the leaders is expressing the directive and the commissive. The directive, when they push the interlocutor, here Nuh, to perform an action. Bring us what you threaten us. And here we are referring to the chapter number 11, mentioning the verse number 32. قالوا يا نوح قد جادلتنا فأكثرت جدالنا فأتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين. And also they are expressing the commissive, which consists from the speaker to engage, to perform an action. We will surely drive you out. لنخرجنكم من أرضنا أو لتعودن في ملتنا. You will surely be of those who are stoned. لئن لم تنتهي يا نوح لتكونن من المرجومين. This is in the chapter number 26, Surah Al-Shu'ara, the verse number number 116. And here we notice that there is an electionary force because both interlocutors are insisting in their activity of al-taqawul, which means there is a substantial difference in both worldviews. In other words, al-taqawul of Nuh compared to al-taqawul of the leaders and the rest of their people. And when we compare al-taqawul of the leaders with al-taqawul of Nuh, we notice that we can conclude there is a big gap and a big difference between two main worldviews. Worldview which is based on monotheism and another worldview which is based on polytheism. And when Nuh is noticing that his people are using the commissive, which means they have the intention to move from using al-taqawul to perform a negative action toward Nuh, he stopped his activity of al-taqawul, which means that Nuh becomes aware that his activity of al-taqawul will not succeed. And here Nuh is he is moving from using al-taqawul with his people to using the activity of al-taqawul with his Lord. And here the verse number 117 is confirming what we are referring to. قال رب قالوا لئن لم تنتهي يا نوح لتكونن من المرجومين قال رب إن قومي كذبون فافتح بيني وبينهم فتحا ونجني ومن معي من المؤمنين. And here the translation is that, so they said, Noah, if you do not stop this, you will be stoned. He said, my Lord. And here we notice that he moved from using al-taqawul with his people to using al-taqawul with his Lord. So they said, Noah, if you do not stop this, you will be stoned. He said, just after, he said, my Lord, my people have rejected me. So make a firm judgment between me and them, and save me and my believing followers. And here we notice that there is also another voice which is introduced, because just after the Quran, the Quran or the Quranic voice is introduced, because the Quran is saying after فأنجيناه من معه في الفلك المشحون ثم أغرقنا بعد الباقين. And here we notice that there is a connection between what is inside the Quranic story and what is outside the Quranic story, referring to the audience, referring to who is hearing and or listening to this story. And here we can refer to what could be named the lived Quran. It means that the Quran is not important as a text itself, but it is important for the hearer or the listener or the reader or the audience, globally speaking. And this movement of the activity of al-taqawul, which was between Noah and his people, then it becomes between Noah and his Lord, and the third voice is introduced, referring to al-taqawul, if we could be named al-taqawul of the Quran itself, refer to the connection between the Quran as a text and the audience. And here, because the audience or the hearer and the reader or the reader is reading this story, but how the reader or the hearer can be can identify him or herself with al-taqawul of Noah, or identify himself or herself with the al-taqawul of the leaders. The Quran is introducing this third voice to make a sharp difference between the goal of al-taqawul of Noah and the goal of al-taqawul of the leaders. And the Quran is referring to these parts of the chapter and other chapters also. فكذبوه فأنجيناه فكذبوه فنجيناه والذين معه في الفلك, which means that the Quran, the third voice, al-taqawul of the Quran itself, is pushing the audience to adopt al-taqawul of Noah and to reject al-taqawul of the leaders, because al-taqawul of Noah is reflecting positivity at some point, and al-taqawul of the leaders is reflecting negativity at some point. And from this perspective, the Quran is making a sharp difference between these two kinds of al-taqawul, and they are the third voice, which is the Quranic voice, is saying that these two kind of activity of taqawul are not similar in terms of assessment, in terms of goal, in terms of evaluation, in terms of the what is valuable for the hearer or the reader. And the reason why the Quran is expressing both activity of al-taqawul of Noah and the leaders and the rest of Noah's people, but at the same time the Quran is using also the verb كذبوه in various parts of chapters, Quranic chapters, which are referring to the verbal action al-taqawul of Noah and his people. And from this perspective, we can refer, for example, to the chapter number 7, Surah Al-A'raf, the verse number 64. فكذبوه فنجيناه والذين معه في الفلك وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوما عمين. Could be translated, but they called him a liar. We saved him and those who were with him on the ark, and we drowned those who rejected our revelations. They were willfully blind. And also in the chapter number 10, Surah Yunus, the verse number 73, فكذبوه فنجيناه ومن معه في الفلك وجعلناهم خلائف وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين. Could be translated, but they rejected him, we saved him and those with him on the ark and let them survive, and we drowned those who denied our revelations. See what was the end of those who were forewarned. Yes. And in other verses, it consists in all cases that the Quran is showing al-taqawul of both parties, but at the same time, the Quran is attracting the attention of the audience to make a sharp difference between these two types of al-taqawul, and at the same time, the audience is pushed by the Quranic voice or the Quranic discourse to adopt one kind of al-taqawul and to reject the second kind of al-taqawul, referring respectively to Nuh al-taqawul and the leaders and the rest of Noah's people al-taqawul. I think I can stop here if you want, because
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. AbdelMadjid.
Details. Maybe I can give another lecture, because I don't want to overwhelm the audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the many important linguistic details about the story that we sometimes overlook. I have personally a lot of questions. I know students have a lot of questions as well. So we're going to pause the recording for our questions. But before
please, I spoke for how I mean the length of the time.
Yeah, we had an hour, almost an hour, and we still have 15 minutes for a Q&A, if you don't mind. That will be unrecorded. But before before we disconnect from you, as I always do with my guests, a quick update from you on your current research projects or new classes you're teaching, anything you'd like to share with audience.
Yes. I didn't understand you.
The question?
Yeah.
So any updates on your current research or new courses you're teaching? What are you up to? Anything to share with audience, if you're comfortable with sharing with us? I always end with asking my guests this question.
Sure, it's my pleasure. After finishing my PhD on al-taqawul between Nuh and his people, now I am working on the story of Abraham. A story of Abraham. I have a paper that will be published in January of next year. It was accepted and it will be published, and I am still working on this character. And I took all the Quranic verses which are referring to this character, not only his the speech of this character, but also other statements or other Quranic verses which are referring to this character. And I found a lot of things to think about, and inshallah I will be the opportunity to give a talk with in your this in this.
Thank you so much. We would love to hear from you. Congratulations on the acceptance of the publication of the new paper. We would love to hear more about it, inshallah. Thank you so much for joining Nebraska Talk series, Dr. AbdelMadjid. Thank you so much. I'm going to be pausing the recording now for Q&A.